Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here, once again returning to satisfy your beat 'em up lust and satiate your thirst for retro gaming knowledge. As one would likely hope for, the subject we're exploring today is packed full of both of these wonderful things. While we all love a bloody good video game, there is no doubt that one of the most beloved topics in all of geekdom is that of comic books. Throughout the years there have been many titles that have decided to utilise comic book licenses in order to further boost sales. Vigilantes such as Batman, the X-Men and even the intergalactic Silver Surfer have all had games dedicated to their exploits and reckless behaviour, all with varying degrees of success. Some, such as the classic X-Men arcade title, still garner a huge cult following to this day, many decades after their original release. Others, like the aforementioned Silver Surfer, have suffered from a myriad of negative reviews by modern gamers, thus consigning them to an existence of populating various top 10 worst games of all time lists. Another popular target of derision from the modern retro gaming community is of course the publisher LJN, and their extensive library of subpar titles for many of the consoles of yesteryear. It is no secret that their business model appeared to heavily rely on licenses from movies and other successful elements of pop culture. They would churn out hastily developed games to cash in on the popularity of said brands. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Beetlejuice and Jaws all received rather awful video game adaptations. While many of these crap games have received their fair share of coverage and exploration, today we are going to try something different, as according to the retro gaming YouTube god, that is the angry video game nerd, the company known as Laughing Joking Numbnuts actually managed to create some half respectable titles. One of these is of course LJN Spiderman and Venom Maximum Carnage, which according to the words of the famous content creator himself, it's not shit. So if that's not a seal of approval from the very angry middle-aged man, I don't know what is. In this rather innovative upload we are going to be exploring whether there is any truth to this comment that was made by the beloved satirical character, so prepare yourself to sit back, open your ear holes and relax as we explore the madness that is LJN Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage. Yeah! The year is 1994 and a Manchester-based games developer has decided to once again work on a title inspired by superheroes. Software Creations, a case for nominative determinism, if there ever was one, have a somewhat checkered past when it comes to handling superhero computer games. They released the somewhat well-received Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge, and the already mentioned brutally difficult Silver Surfer game on the Super Nintendo and NES respectively. This time the Mancunian studio would once again draw upon the forever popular Spider-Man series, but on this occasion the web slinger would be joined by one of the most popular anti-heroes in comic book history as of yet, Venom. Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage was developed by the Spidey team, a group of code writers, musicians and artists from Software Creations, dedicated to making this outing for the bodysuit wearing Peter Parker. Members of the team included names such as Paul Murray, who went on to develop several notable games, such as Sly Cooper, Thieves in Time, and the notorious BMX XXX, a game that 14-year-old boys everywhere were trying to get hold of in 2002, facing numerous censorship and restriction issues the world over. Another member of the team was Andrew Cross, who alongside contributing to this Spider-Man title, worked on games such as the Amiga and DOS versions of Jurassic Park and FIFA 99. So as you can see from all of this, an extremely varied group of individuals worked on the game, and I'm sure you'll all agree. Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage puts the player in the role of everybody's favourite teenage crime fighter, Peter Parker, as he looks to dispense justice to the criminals and evil geniuses that populate the streets of New York City. This task is made even more difficult because one of Spider-Man's greatest and most powerful enemies has managed to break free from their confines, the villain we call Carnage. Originally with no superpowers, Cletus Cassidy was a violent and ruthless serial killer who managed to bond with an alien symbiote, granting him tremendous power and a cool costume alongside his new moniker. Carnage seeks to wreak havoc on the city and Spider-Man in particular, due to his capture at the hands of Peter Parker's alter ego previously. The evil and twisted villain is aided in his murderous and destructive rampage by a cast of lesser known but still quite strong bad guys. These lot feature heavily in cutscenes and as boss fights at the end of certain stages. This motley crew has not only made an enemy of the web-slinging high schooler, however, as they have managed to draw the ire of a super popular badass Venom. Venom is the second playable character in the superhero romp, bringing his own brand of arse-kicking to proceedings. Also known as Eddie Brock, he is the rival to Peter Parker, who like Carnage has managed to bond with a symbiote from outer space, and taken the mantle of Venom. As we mentioned before, Venom is an anti-hero, so he brings a far more gritty and violent approach to dispatching of Carnage's group of miscreants. As well as having dedicated stages, Venom also offers opportunities for players to take alternative routes through levels, providing a surprising amount of replay value for this often forgotten LJN release. Throughout this affair though, Venom is not the only ally that Spider-Man encounters during his adventures, as everybody's favourite defender of the good old US of A, Captain America, is joined by a collection of much less well-known heroes too. This includes Cloak, Dagger, and even the brilliantly named Morbius, the living vampire. Ooh. They act as special attacks that can be called upon to deal massive damage to every enemy that is on the screen at a time. This promptly brings up memories of Streets of Rage, and makes you wish that you were playing that legendary beat 'em up instead. Anyway, this wide cast of fairly niche characters is definitely an attractive prospect for those Marvel fanatics out there, although I must say I was disappointed not to see Batman or the Hero Turtle show up, especially Rembrandt. The game follows the classic beat 'em up formula when it comes to the meat and bones of its gameplay, a style of which we adore on here. You traverse the levels and smash a variety of lesser henchmen, waiting for the go arrow to appear and let you know which direction to head in order to progress. This happens once all the enemies in the sections have been suitably dispatched, and oddly can lead to you going from right to left several times in a row. I presume this is just an oversight in level design, but I must admit it is noticeably frustrating at points. Unlike many of his beat 'em up peers, Spider-Man's ability to climb buildings does offer the sense of greater movement. However, many of the climbing sections are in fact stages all to themselves. But still, it makes a nice change to move through a beat 'em up level vertically, instead of the traditional horizontal approach. Weaving the action together is a series of actually rather impressive cutscenes, which do the heavy lifting in terms of storyline and stylized graphics. They are some of the most absolutely wonderful and fairly faithful interpretations of Spider-Man's comic book origins that you will find in this generation of games. Presented as cells that have been effectively torn from the hallowed pages of the Marvel comics themselves, there was a lot to enjoy here for both long-time fans of the publication and those who are only just discovering it. This is a clever way for the game to approach the storytelling, giving itself an undeniable charm and making the rather cookie-cutter plot appear far more appealing than it would have been if delivered through simpler and generic means. Not all is rosy though when it comes to the auditory experience of Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage. It really can only be described as a complete and total horror show. The stage themes and incidental music are tedious and repetitive, causing all but the most masochistic of gamers to reach for the mute button. This is a huge disappointment for any long-term retro beat 'em up fan, I am sure you will agree, especially if your ears have been blessed in the past by the works of people such as Yuzo Koshiro. There is no argument that the genre hasn't been gifted throughout the years with a stunning array of soundtracks, but this is honestly one of the most horrendous selections of video game music that I have ever had the misfortune of being subjected to. I would rather have a buffalo take a diarrhea dump in my ear than listen to this music. Or worse, be forced to listen to Rex Viper over humanity. On a more positive note, the game looks half decent in the grand scheme of things. Whilst it does not break any new grounds with its visuals, the game manages to more or less faithfully recreate the heroes and villains that fans across the globe have come to love from the Marvel publishing machine. While upsides can be found if we look hard enough, the levels on the other hand are mostly dull and empty streets or forests that rarely impress. Despite a certain degree of detail being given to the backgrounds, once again I can't help but think of the amazing Streets of Rage, and how that game had such vivid and exciting stages in comparison to this middling offering. And that game was over 3 years old at the time that Maximum Carnage was developed. Maybe I'm expecting a little too much from an LJN release, but the lack of creativity is rather criminal at times. As for the look of the sprite work in the game, the art has been drawn to an okay standard, but the animation used to bring the character models to life is again found lacking. The swinging around as Spider-Man looks mostly fine, if not a bit stuttery, but the punches and kicks dished out by both the player and the enemies looks basic and poorly executed. This adds to the actual fighting in this beat 'em up feeling not very impactful at all. However, I must say that the comic book sound effects that are displayed on screen are a nice touch that gives the game a touch of extra life. The controls mimic the animation and art in a way that is serviceable and not overly offensive. It just lacks anything that would draw in a casual gamer or a non-Marvel fan. Overall, it is honestly a fairly shallow gameplay experience that tries its best to imitate the much better beat 'em ups that came before it, much like its approach to the art and level design too. Once the player has guided Spider-Man and Venom through much of the mean streets of New York on the hunt for the nefarious Carnage, they face a boss rush and the supposed end to the game. This proves to be a false ending and they suddenly find themselves at an abandoned children's home for the final stand. The fight against Carnage can prove difficult and it is probably the most challenging fight in the entire game, which makes perfect sense as it is the final boss after all. Once justice has been dispensed to Carnage using both playable characters, we are treated to another one of those rather impressive comic book style cutscenes. The Avengers arrive to take the pesky bad guy away, Spider-Man hits on one of the Lady Avengers and a sequel is teased all in around 30 seconds. What a finish! And who said romance is dead? This all brings us around to coming to a conclusion regarding the game. Is it completely horrible? Well, absolutely not. Is it anything special? Well, again, I'm going to have to say no to that as well. So, as a final thought, while I would find it quite difficult to refer to this as a good game, the angry video game nerds' comments were completely accurate when he declared that it wasn't shit. On this occasion, the laughing, joking numbnuts would manage to deliver an acceptable yet underwhelming game. Still, if you want a good arcade-style beat-em-up starring Marvel characters, obviously stick with the likes of X-Men Arcade, or hell, play Spider-Man Arcade by Sega if you want a better Spider-Man beat-em-up experience. In fact, I've covered both of these games in depth on the channel in the past, so why not check them out when you are done with this video? So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage, a game that isn't shit. If you are new here, make sure you like this video, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell, all the good stuff, and why not leave your thoughts on this game down below. As a thank you to those who back my work on Patreon, I try my best to answer a different question at the end of each of my pieces of work. The legendary Man Shovel asks me, in your humble opinion, is Super Smash Bros. A legitimate fighting game franchise? And if so not, why? To answer this question, personally I think the answer is no. Super Smash Bros. Is not a legitimate fighting game franchise, as it breaks all the conventions of what a fighting game is. Traditional matches are expanded upon to be more than one-on-one, characters do not have life bars, weapons and items can be used in matches, and much more. The game is not a fighter by traditional standards. Instead, I replace the game in the arena fighter genre, with the likes of Airgites and the Power Stone series. Smash Bros. Is more of a party game that some gamers take too seriously, rather than it is anything else. Hence why in tournaments they have to sanitize the rules by removing items etc. to even make it competitive in the first place. But that's just my hot take. Speaking of Smash Brothers, my wife Lady Decade has a video covering the super enhanced Nintendo 64 version of the game known as Smash Remix, debuting on her channel tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe to her work if you have yet to do so already. Anyway, you laughing, joking numbnuts, see you all again soon. Yeah, cheerio.